皆さん、こんにちは。はじめまして。クリストファー・クレセントです。今日は新しいシリーズ Talking Tsundoku Blues のデビューです。エピソード1、将軍についてよろしくお願いし、よろしくお願いいたします。Okay, so talking about Shogun, I noticed all you booktubers out there are always holding a mug or a cup and you're sort of drinking while you're talking. And I thought, well, I can gargle my way through a review too. So let me get some coffee here. Can I get some coffee? You have any coffee?
すいません、日本酒しか置いてないんですよ。
じゃあ日本酒で。
はい。
小判お願いします。Oh,
はい、どうも。
okay. ありがとうございます。Okay. So I guess I'll just I'll hold this, and then we'll do the review, Booktube style, just like this. This thing's kind of heavy, but I can make it lighter. Kanpai. All right. Shogun. I don't have a fancy copy of this. I just have this pocket size edition. Yeah, pocket size. Maybe if you're wearing Jinko jeans, it's pocket size. It's a hefty brick right there. I'm not going to do a plot summary because I feel like if you're watching this video, you probably know something about this book. It was an international bestseller. It's been made into 2 TV miniseries. So suffice to say, the premise, John Blackthorne, henceforth known as the Anjin or pilot, gets shipwrecked in Izu, which is modern-day Shizuoka prefecture in Japan. And he's an Englishman. He's on a Dutch ship. He gets shipwrecked. He meets all of the high-level samurai and daimyo of the time, and he goes on a crazy adventure. And that's basically all you need to know. And it takes place in the year 1600. I think the interesting thing about Shogun is the detail and the realistic historical setting. It's fascinating how James Clavell, the author, was able to really bring it to life in a way that I think it's very hard to do in a historical novel. I think it's easy to lose your reader, but he is just absolutely skilled in giving you just enough information and filling in a lot of the details as the story rolls along. He keeps things moving. The scenes are fairly short. The detail is minimal, and it's really a master class in how to write economically and give as much information as possible and just let the reader fill in the details. There are so many characters, and there's so much tension, and the greatest thing about Clavell is that he is able to go inside of the minds of each of the characters, often while there's dialogue going on between them, and you get to see what each person is thinking and the scheming that's going on between them, the dynamics, the power dynamics. Everyone's trying to outsmart the other. Everyone's wondering what the other one's thinking, and it just it sounds like it would bog down the story, but it doesn't at all. It just keeps moving, and it keeps you invested in every character. And I think if anybody out there wants to learn how to write a book with a huge cast of characters and to keep everything very organized and very clear for the reader, Shogun is a master class in how to do that, because it just reads so smoothly for how much detail there is and how many characters and how many plots and subplots and reversals are going on. It can be a little light on description sometimes, but that can be a good thing. Even if he described the traditional Japanese house or the traditional Japanese garden, if you don't know what the shoji sliding paper doors are, if you don't know what a tatami mat is, more description may not help you. So he keeps everything to a minimum, and I think that's to the book's benefit, because it's already over 1,100 pages, and you can't get too bogged down in the details and describing things. So, and of course, you can always look up that stuff and see, oh, that's what it is. One more thing that I love about this book is that you can learn so much. You can learn about sailing and the details of ships. You can learn about the falconry, sending out falcons to hunt. Of course, you can learn about Japanese culture, the Sengoku period of Japan, Bushido, Shinto, a little bit of Buddhism. You can learn about the Portuguese, the traders, the Catholics, the Catholic missionaries, the power dynamics of how the Jesuits were coming into Asia and trading Japanese silver for Chinese silks. Another thing that I think is interesting is the floating world, which is the world of the pleasure world, the geishas and the night world, if you will. Of course, in the book, they refer to it as the willow world, and I thought that was interesting. Why are they called the ladies of the willow world? Well, that's because they're supposed to be as graceful as willows. I know that as the floating world because it's the lilies floating on the lake, supposed to be that sort of dreamlike. You lose yourself in the world of the night, the entertainers, the tea houses that are serving many other things other than tea. I don't feel the need to go into the characters so much because, again, if you're watching this video, I assume you know something about this book, and if you don't, then you can just go look it up. One of the things that I really like about this story is it's all pretty much based on real people who existed, real historical figures of the time. And on Wikipedia, actually, you can see the list of names and their real life counterparts, which I think is actually really interesting. I actually had the Wikipedia page up as I was reading many times, and I would check. Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense because historically, Oda Nobunaga, was assassinated by. You can kind of geek out on history. Of course, Lord Toranaga, or his full name, Yoshi Toranaga no Minowara, is the lord of the Kanto region, which in this book, it actually, they call it the Kwanto, but we'll get into that a little bit later. I find him to be the most fascinating character. He was based on the real-life Tokugawa Ieyasu, who is a really fascinating historical figure. And I just love Toranaga so much. He's an undefeated general. He's aging into his twilight years, and he's still incredibly powerful, and everyone is sort of against him, and he has to get out of these very dangerous situations using his own wits and his cunning and his strategical thinking. And I love the fact that Toranaga is always comparing people to birds because he hunts with falcons. He has a pet falcon, and he's always thinking about the different types of birds and what kind of person, what character, represents that type of hawk or that type of birds of prey. And of course, his backstory is fascinating. How we see him in flashbacks, his rise from when he was just a boy, participating in his first battle, and you get to see a little bit of that in the miniseries, the newest miniseries as well, which is I highly recommend. It's a really great show. My other favorite character, of course, is Mariko Toda Mariko-sama, and she's a daughter of the assassin Akechi Jinsai, and I'm not going to tell you who he assassinated. You can find out for yourself. She's a convert to Catholicism, but she still is loyal to Toranaga, and she still has the Shinto and Buddhist beliefs deep in herself. She, of course, is Anjin's translator because she can speak Portuguese and Latin and other languages. She's in a loveless arranged marriage. She has a death wish to commit seppuku, but she cannot because she is prevented by her liege lord, and she's just an absolutely fascinating character. Very, very dark character. You think she's one thing, and then she ends up being something quite different. And it's fascinating to see her develop as a character over the course of the story. In the sense of historical fiction, I think that Shogun is very much like a blood meridian in my mind. It's a story about power, and it's a story about violence, and it's a story about the clash of cultures. Now, Blood Meridian has a lot of characters that are invented, but the majority of characters are real historical figures to some degree, if not pastiche. And Shogun is very similar to that. They are all real characters, I think, for the most part, but what makes it fiction is that, for example, Anjin and Mariko actually never met. Their real-life counterparts never met, seemingly, in history. So those kinds of things are invented. The plot is quite invented, but the major events and the major points are taken directly from history. And a lot of the plot is lifted from William Adams, and it's his journals that Clavell is using to basically structure the entire novel. It's a really interesting time in Japanese history. Next, I'd like to talk about some of my favorite passages and some of my favorite moments. There's a sequence on page 369 where there's a battle going on aboard a ship, and it's from the perspective of Anjin, or John Blackthorne. He felt more than saw, the sword slashing for his throat, and leapt backward out of its way. One Gray stabbed after him. Gray would be the enemy samurai. The other halted over Mariko, sword raised. At that instant, Blackthorne saw Mariko come to life. She threw herself into the unsuspecting samurai's legs, crashing him to the deck. Then, scrambling across to the dead Gray, she grabbed the sword out of his still twitching hand and leapt on the guard with a cry. The Gray had regained his feet, and howling with rage, he came at her. She backed and slashed bravely, but Blackthorne knew she was lost, the man too strong. Somehow Blackthorne avoided another death thrust from his own foe, and kicked him away, and threw his knife at Mariko's assailant. It struck the man in the back, causing his blow to go wild, and then Blackthorne found himself on the quarterdeck, helplessly at bay. One Gray bounding up the steps after him, the other, who had just won the four-poop fight, four-poop, racing toward him along the deck. He jumped for the gunwale and the safety of the sea, but slipped on the blood-wet deck. And I love this because there isn't actually as much action as you would think in a book like this. It's the battle scenes and the fighting is fairly minimal. It's spaced out pretty good. And this sequence is really intense. And I just love those descriptions, the blood-wet deck, and the simplicity of, scrambling across and grabbing the sword out of his still twitching hand. I mean, these descriptions are minimal, and yet you can really see it in your mind. It's not overly complicated. It's not overwritten. It's just enough that you can You imagine it, and it keeps the story moving forward. And I think Clavell, his greatest strength as a writer is that sort of minimalism. He knows to just give the reader enough. There's an incredible sequence that starts around page 452, where Lord Toranaga arrives in Izu by ship. Izu is present-day Shizuoka Prefecture. And as he exits the cabin, he sees Yabu, who's another lord, a smaller level guy. And Yabu has massed all of his samurai around the bay, and Toranaga sees all of them, and he realizes what danger he's in, even though they're now allies. But he is very uneasy because he only has 50 men as guards, and there's hundreds surrounding him now in this bay. And as the ship approaches the dock, Toranaga is desperately seeking a solution, because there's no way that he can stay there with only 50 guards. He's thinking, Yabu is as treacherous as a shark, and you don't tempt sharks, never in their own waters. He's certain that if he stays in Izu, Yabu will probably deliver his head to Ishido, Ishido being Toranaga's number one adversary. And he's a daimyo who's scheming against Toranaga. He hates his rise. He wants to end his life. He wants to end his legacy because he feels threatened by him. Ishido is in Osaka, and Toranaga now immediately wants to leave for Tokyo because he wants to regroup. He wants to re-strategize. But he can't just leave because it would look weak and it would be strange, and they might just kill him. Who knows what would happen? Over the next few pages, we see his thoughts as he tries to outwit and outmaneuver Yabu, who simultaneously is thinking of how to keep Toranaga there and what to do. Should he capture him? Should he kill him and deliver him to Ishido, the daimyo in Osaka? And I love the fact that you can see Toranaga's thoughts, you can see Yabu's thoughts, you can see the Yabu's generals and commanders inside of their heads. You can see all of their thoughts, all while the sequence is going on. The ship is pulling into the bay, and they're welcoming each other, and it's just so intense. The intensity is just unreal. By the way, in the miniseries, if you watch the TV show, it's not Yabu, it's Yabushige, is played by the great Asano Tadanobu. So as Toranaga exits the ship and he walks down the gangplank, he comes to grips with the fact that this may be his end. How is he going to get out of this situation? He tells the 50 guards that are still aboard to immediately prepare to sail for Edo, which is present-day Tokyo. And then he begins to inspect Yabu's forces that are massed there along the bay. No one has expected him to do this, and Yabu himself is a bit confused, and Toranaga marches into the assembled samurai there, and he starts greeting them, and Yabu seems to be very taken aback by this. No one was expecting this inspection. And he can feel Yabu's eyes on him from behind, but he doesn't look back, he doesn't turn around. He greets Yabu's commanders one by one. Everything depends on Toranaga taking the initiative. And during the sequence, there are some flashbacks, and there's a little bit of backstory, and we learn that Toranaga is an undefeated general. We learn what power he holds from the higher level commanders down to the lowest level samurai, the foot soldiers. Everyone respects him, although their leader Yabu may be leading them against him, but still there's this respect for this great military commander. And we see him greet the high-ranking commanders and samurai, and he remembers the battles that they fought together. Weren't you in this battle? Weren't you fighting with us at this campaign? And the samurai feels so proud to be recognized and so proud to be thanked by him. And even Yabu himself starts to kind of feel this pride at this moment. And Yabu starts to become overwhelmed by this public display of thanks and praise. And then there are little flashbacks, and there's a lot of history, and it goes into the battles a little bit. And after Toranaga inspects everyone, then Yabu and his generals, Omi and Igurashi, they're exhausted after this whole thing. But Toranaga's not. He's still pushing onward. And it's at that moment that he gives a speech to all of the samurai of Izu that are gathered there. And he actually shouts the battle cry, Kashigi. He shouts it to them and he bows to them. And then when he stands back up, all of the samurai shout, Toranaga! And they all bow to him. And Yabu is completely overcome by this moment, despite himself, despite all the scheming that he's been thinking this whole time. And it's a cool moment in the miniseries as well, but in the book it sort of gave me chills at that moment. And so even Yabu bows. He's so overcome by the moment that he actually bows to Toranaga. And then he again tries to get Toranaga to stay. Please just stay a couple days. We can work this out together. But Toranaga again refuses. And there's this complex emotion going on of loyalty and betrayal, and Yabu's kind of put in between Ishido in Osaka and Toranaga here in the Kanto region, and he doesn't know who to ally with, and he's becoming more and more frustrated and desperate. And then Toranaga calls an honor guard to approach, and he pulls out his very, very precious and very rare Minowara blade katana, his sword. And he gives it to Yabu at that moment as a token of being allied together. And Yabu knows the power of this sword, and he knows that this sword is priceless, and Toranaga has had this sword for 15 years. He got it after a battle, and he's just absolutely overcome, and he's so confused. And Toranaga's thinking, he's so glad to see Yabu being sort of overwhelmed by this moment because his strategy has some holes in it. And if Yabu realizes that, then all is lost. But if he can keep him distracted and keep him sort of overwhelmed by the power of this moment and this sort of pomp and circumstance, he can maybe get back to the ship and sail to Tokyo, or rather Edo, without losing his head. And so because of the sword, Yabu now becomes the second most powerful lord in the Kanto region after Toranaga. And what that symbolizes is, he is standing basically with the most powerful man. And so the pressure not to betray him is becoming so intense. So Yabu is very frustrated, and he's trying to figure out where his allegiances lie. And then, of course, Toranaga goes back to the ship, and he sails for Edo, and Yabu's completely defeated, and he's sort of amazed that he's holding this amazing sword, and also so confused and sort of frustrated that his entire plan went to hell. And it only takes, 10 or 12 pages to tell, and it's just so incredible. That scene really stayed with me. There's another sequence about swords. On page 593, there's a flashback to one of the samurais throwing this sword into the ocean. And Toranaga is thinking about these swords, these Murasama blades. And he says, "It seemed to quiver with malevolence in his hand. He always scoffed at the legend that certain swords possessed a killing urge of their own, that some swords needed to leap out of the scabbard to drink blood. But now Toranaga believed it." So there's all this amazing weight put on the katanas, which, as if you know anything about samurai, the katana is essentially the soul. It's the soul of the man, which is why you never take them out until you're ready to kill or be killed. And these superstitions that go along with them, and the power that they bring, and the fact that Anjin, when he first arrives, doesn't have swords, and so no one respects him. And then, of course, he starts wearing swords, even though he can't use them. He keeps his pistols and his swords in his kimono. And there's a lot of really great sequences with swords as well. There are also little moments of true Japanese culture, very traditional Japanese culture that, for example, on page 622, there's a little moment about Anjin is sort of looking at his garden, and it has to do with Shinto, the original Japanese religion. He sat on a stone in the garden that had given him so much pleasure, but now it was a shambles. The little bridge was broken, the pond shattered, the stream had vanished. This is after the earthquake. Never mind, he said to no one. The rocks aren't dead. Uekiya had told him that a garden must be settled around its rocks, that without them, a garden is empty, merely a place of growing. One of the rocks was jagged and ordinary, but Uekiya had planted it so that if you looked at it long and hard near sunset, the reddish glow glinting off the veins and the crystal buried within, you could see a whole range of mountains with lingering valleys and deep lakes, and far off, a greening horizon. Night gathering there. Blackthorn touched the rock. I name you Uekiya-sama, he said. This pleased him, and he knew that if Uekiya were alive, the old man would have been very pleased also. Even though he's dead, perhaps he'll know, Blackthorn told himself. Perhaps his kami is here now. Shintoists believed that when they died, they became kami. What is a kami, Mariko-san? Kami is inexplicable, Anjin-san. It's like a spirit, but not. Like a soul, but not. Perhaps it is the insubstantial essence of a thing or person. You should know a human becomes a kami after death, but a tree or rock or plant or painting is equally a kami. Kami are venerated, never worshipped. They exist between heaven and earth, and visit this land of the gods, or leave it, all at the same time. And then he starts asking about Shinto, which of course is directly related to that. And so I feel like there's a lot of great little moments like that where, I mean, that's just, two paragraphs or so, but it really gives you this little flavor of, traditional Japan. And again, if you want to explore these things, it's a great bait to explore the traditional religions and the beliefs of Japanese people. One thing I forgot to mention when I was talking about characters is there are great descriptions, especially when characters suddenly come in. There's a wonderful description at the beginning of chapter 40, where Gyoko-san, the mama-san, which is like the head of the brothel or the head of the tea house, which actually still now they in the bars and places like that, they call the proprietor is usually the mama-san. So Gyoko is the mama-san, and Clavell describes her in this way. The mama-san was a tall, elegant woman in her early 50s with a lovely smile, but she drank too much sake. Her heart was an abacus, and she possessed a nose that could smell a single piece of silver from 50 ri, ri being the measurement of distance. And I just love that. She drank too much sake. Her heart was an abacus, and she possessed a nose that could smell a piece of silver from great distance. I appreciate a book that is not only entertaining and interesting in any kind of way, but that teaches me something. The Sengoku period is a fascinating period of Japanese history, and if you're interested in this kind of thing, I have a book recommendation here. There's a phenomenal book called Legends of the Samurai, and this is by Hiroaki Sato. And this is an anthology. It's just a collection of various works, and a lot of them are legends and myths, and many of them are true stories. And there's samurai tales, there's commentary, there's politics and warriors and the evolution of the samurai. There are illustrations, there are maps. This is a really, really great book for, again, just dipping into samurai culture. And actually in the back of it, there's a huge bibliography of many, many books that he draws from. So I would recommend this if you like Shogun, if you like even if you like the miniseries and you're interested in the Sengoku period or samurai in general. Fascinating anthology. Of course, there's also, you can get like history of Japan books, but they're kind of dry, and I feel like Shogun is a great place to start to learn about Japanese history and just have a great time doing it. If you have seen the miniseries, give the book a try. And if you've read the book and you haven't seen the miniseries, go watch that, because it's also really good, and it's slightly different. It's condensed, and it's a lot of fun. Thank you for joining me.
Yes.
So-
Bringing the Sunday wife.
The Sunday wife, the Japanese wife. I wanted to ask you about a couple things in here
Okay.
because I know you haven't read the book, but you are Japanese and you have watched the miniseries. So I think there are some mistakes in this book. Not even historical mistakes, but like Japanese language mistakes. For example, on page 609, he writes the word tomodashi.
Where?
And I believe Omi had told him as a tomodashi, a friend.
Yeah. That's cute.
So, but I think I don't think this is Anjin misunderstanding the word. I think this is James Clavell himself misunderstanding the
Yeah.
word. It would be tomodachi.
Yeah, tomodachi. Yeah.
Not tomodachi.
No one caught that, I guess.
I guess not, yeah. Another one would be on page 524 and other points. This one actually comes up a few times. In the traditional Japanese house, there is an alcove. An alcove.
That's how you say it?
Yeah, the kind of the area where
Okay.
you would put the hanging scroll, the little flower arrangement. And so, Nanemo Anjin-san, she replied, it was nothing important. She went to the takonama.
Yeah.
I can't even say it.
Takonama, yeah.
Takonama. Now, I know this word as tokonoma,
Yeah.
right? What's your impression of a takonama?
Takonama. So, I keep imagining the octopus just going. Just because taco means octopus
Right.
and nama means raw. Right. So it's like just a raw, alive octopus just
Yeah.
going around. It just really sounds really funny because you are supposed to put something beautiful like a decoration there, but then instead like octopus is just crawling.
Yeah. Yeah, she went to the raw octopus.
Takonama, yeah.
Yes. Why did she go to the raw octopus? Another thing that I'm not sure if this is a historical thing or this is just 1970s Japanese or English. What do you say, Romaji? Making Japanese into English. Toranaga is the daimyo of Kwanto, Kwanto, which is the Kanto region.
Yeah.
Right.
Kanto, yes.
Do you know if that's the W is like historically was it said Kwanto the way that like Tokyo was Edo or Shizuoka was Izu or something like that?
Oh no, it's not like that. It's just how it's written. Like sometimes it's ka used to be like kwa. Like it can be spelled out that way. It's how I understand. Like when you see like an older written things or written things like you encounter that. So that I don't think that's a mistake.
Yeah, it's just like the old way to write it. Yeah.
Sometimes in hiragana it's written out like
With like the
kwa.
Kwanto. Okay, I see. So that's not really a mistake. Now I want to get to the biggest thing that a lot of people talk about when they talk about Shogun, which is ne.
Yeah.
The ne. Endless ne. I didn't even like mark a page where they say ne because they say it on almost every page. What do you think about that?
It would bother me too. But I mean, how else would you like differentiate that? Just English versus that it's Japanese but written in English. Then you have to somehow differentiate that.
Right,
So.
right. Well, that's what I wanted to say because it actually didn't bother me so much because I live in Japan, and when I talk with people who when they speak English, Japanese people speak English, they do say ne at the end sometimes. They're like,
in the eastern region.
Yeah, and it's kind of sometimes a kind of a tick.
Not the tick, but it's just that's how it goes. How the language goes.
Okay, but they're speaking English to me, but they say ne sometimes.
I see.
So ne, or like, they sort of have that.
Okay.
I don't mean like
But
tick.
not
I
like
just mean
this,
like
though,
not like this, not like this. But there's a tendency amongst some people to use ne, even when they're speaking English. So it actually didn't bother me that much because I thought, he's just doing like how Japanese people, sort of talk in a fiction, kind of fake English way. But I think the thing that you and I had talked before was like it makes it very contemporary, and probably back then it would not have been like that. They wouldn't have said ne.
It sounds a little too modern for me. Like, yeah, it's like yeah, if the author just thought that's how we talk, then I didn't know if he wondered, is it how samurai and that kind of people talked back in the day? Like.
It's unclear to me whether he's doing it. Probably he's doing it to mark, this is a Japanese sentence,
Yeah.
and then ne is at the end to kind of show. But I mean, it doesn't do it constantly. But even like here you go, Gyoko, the mama-san, is talking, and she says, "Kiku-san, when you've changed, you will join us, ne." Yeah, I find it to be kind of strange, but it didn't really bother me that much. Some people really hate it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Another one is the "so sorry." Many, many times they say so sorry, and I wonder if that's James Clavell hearing,
Yeah.
1970s Japanese people saying so sorry, or he's trying to do like sumimasen or gomen nasai. I don't know.
Well, we do apologize a lot.
Yeah.
To say excuse me or,
Sure.
pardon me or
Yeah.
like anything like that is apology.
It starts to come across as almost like a stereotype, I guess, and that's
yeah,
why
sure.
the ne thing I'm okay with it, but the so sorry, like to the extent that it's used, I almost thought this is a little too much. This is kind of overkill, Yeah, we don't have to talk about the carrier pigeons. Carrier pigeons did not exist in the Sengoku period in Japan, so that was also fiction. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your expertise.
You're welcome.
So, in conclusion, I just have one more thing to say. Kanpai!